Okay, all right. So, yes, Windows 10, it's the end of life coming up, and it's kind of, I swear it seems it's just yesterday that Windows 7 came end of life, but I think that's to do with my age more than anything else. Um, so yes, basically it's something we all need to know about and something we need to prepare for. Um, so effectively, we'll just kick off. So when does support end? Support ends on the 24th of October 2025. Now, I appreciate that in many terms that's ages away. However, given that there's substantial things that might need to be done in preparation, you kind of need to be thinking about this now before coming around in October and going, oh, we need to do something, because you might find that it costs more money because there's less machines available or whatever it might be. So when support ends, well, what happens? So there's two kind of main things. So the first one is that there's no more upgrades for new features. Now, I appreciate that a lot of the time you'll sit there and say, well, actually, I don't need any new features. However, when you consider that Microsoft 365 will no longer be supported on Windows 10, and Microsoft 365 is continuously updated, you might find that actually you start having issues with your 365. And then that's to do with all the rest of the software you use on your machines. I mean, generally speaking, people like Adobe will keep Reader running for longer. However, what you'll find is because it's no longer supported by Microsoft, those vendors will say, we're not supporting it on Windows 10. So if you do have a problem, they'll just use that as the excuse as to why they're not going to help you with it. But more importantly, and much more importantly, is the second effect is there's no more security patching. So security patches are released continuously. There's always vulnerabilities coming up against Windows and, in fact, all OSs. And the vendors like Microsoft, Apple, or whoever will just continuously roll out patches to get rid of those vulnerabilities. So what does that mean for your business if you don't upgrade or you continue to run Windows 10 PCs? Well, the actual bottom line is that you're taking your putting a risk onto your business. Over 30% of global cyber attacks target vulnerabilities in unsupported operating systems. That kind of just sums it up, because the trouble is that you don't patch and therefore it works. There's a stat somewhere that if you place a Windows 7 machine on the internet, direct to the internet, it will get hacked within 15 to 20 minutes. And the reason is that there's people out there running automated scripts that are just looking for these machines to come on, knowing that there's no security patches, which means vulnerabilities that have come out are then exploitable, and very, very quickly. It's worth noting that if you have cybersecurity insurance, that might well be invalidated if you're not running latest or supported software. So it's definitely worth looking at the upgrade for doing it. So there are actually benefits to upgrading. It's just not all negativity. Microsoft have released a whole new design. The design, the official word is that the design is to look more Mac, but I'm sure Microsoft will not actually admit to that. But to be fair, it's a lot more rounded, a lot more nicer to look at. The one thing that you will notice immediately is that the start menu is now in the middle of the screen instead of to the left of the screen. I can tell you, when I first put Windows 11 on, I then moved it to the left of the screen, and then I realized that actually you can only fight Microsoft for so long, and then you have to get used to how the new way is. So I put it back into the center of the screen. And to be fair, I'm now used to it being in the center of the screen, so that kind of works. But there are slightly more useful benefits. One of the things that I particularly found useful is File Explorer. So when you're using files, quite often you'll have multiple windows open, and you're trying to remember which window's got the directory structure that you want to use. the new version of File Explorer in Windows 11 has tabs. So much like your browser, instead of having to open a new browser when you're surfing the web, you just need to open a tab, and the File Explorer has added that, which makes life so much easier, to be fair. There's also multiple desktops, which is a new feature which allows you to effectively have I don't know how you want to do it, but say a HR one, a marketing one, a management one, and then you'd have your relevant programs running in each one. So rather than opening and closing and trying to work out which window you've got things running in, you effectively have a desktop dedicated to that. So that works great. And then there's a whole stream of these, but I'll say the only other one that I'll highlight is Copilot AI, which has now been integrated into Windows 11. It does a lot of very nifty features which enable you to work quicker. So one of the key things is that you could quickly open a Copilot and search for things, and it will look through your emails, your Teams, your SharePoint, your OneDrive, your desktop, everything, to find the relevant information related to it. So that's a way of very much increasing productivity. And of course, the whole thing about if you buy a new computer, that a new computer tends to run faster, which again increases productivity. The risks, well, I kind of went slightly into the risk previously with 30% of attacks target unsupported operating systems. To give you some actual examples, you might have heard about the WannaCry ransomware, which hit, well, NHS, but it hit over 200,000 computers across the globe. And that was on unsupported operating systems and unpatched operating systems. That was ransomware. So effectively, you can imagine that if you've got a company that's got even just a couple of updated machines or unsupported machines, they only have to get into that one, and then they've got access to all sorts of stuff that can get you elsewhere. Admittedly, most of you aren't the size of the NHS, which you're probably happy about, but taking it down a level. So we had an incident. It was actually a couple of years ago, and it was an estate agent based in Reading. Not our client called Reading, but an estate agent in Reading. And basically what happened is that they had a NAS, which is network attached storage, and they'd had this for years, and we've been nagging them non-stop about this is no longer fit for purpose. It is years, it's out of date, it's not supported, all the rest of it. And it was very much one of these, yeah, we'll get round to it. We'll get round to it. And then eventually it happened, and they got effectively got ransomware. Now, we had a backup, and so we were able to get their data. However, it went around the NAS, but it also impacted their PCs, and they weren't able to work. And as an estate agent, you have to pay your landlords at a certain time of the month, and it was just before they had to pay the landlords, and they didn't have the banking details, they didn't have anything, and the stress it caused them, because they didn't want their landlords to find out they'd been hacked, but they couldn't pay the landlords because they didn't have access to the information. Now, obviously, after that, they were happy to upgrade and to put things in place to stop it happening. But if it wasn't for that backup that we've been running, it would have been a very different story, and whether the business would have recovered, because once you start telling your landlords what's happened, you're going to lose trust. So the risk of impact to your business, both for your clients and suppliers and so forth, is quite significant. So you really need to make sure you're not running software that's no longer supported or patched or unpatched. Okay. So how can we help? So if you're already one of our clients, then we're doing this already. So we have a piece of software called an RMM, Remote Management and Monitoring and Management. Gosh, you'd think I'd know after all these years. Basically, that sits on your machine, and it will be monitoring your machine and multiple things. And one of the things it's checking for is if your machine isn't Windows 11 already, then is it Windows 10 compliant? Now, if you're one of our clients and you've not been told this, then please let me know, or email account manager or whoever, and just ask for a list of all the machines that aren't Windows which aren't already Windows 11, and then you can also then break down whether or not they are compatible with Windows 11. So Windows 11 did bring in a whole load of new requirements. One of the key ones is a TPM chip, and you're not allowed to ask me what that stands for, but it's a TPM chip. But effectively what it is hardware encrypting on your device. So instead of using resources like the processor and memory to decrypt and encrypt data, it actually uses this hardware chip, which then releases those resources so your computer runs faster. It also will not run on processors over a certain age. Okay, now if you're not a client or you want to try yourself, if you were to Google for Windows 11 PC Health Check app, anything like that, it will show up, and make sure you go to the Microsoft website and download it from there. You can then run that on each individual PC, and it will then show you whether or not it's Windows compatible. So once we know what we're doing, i.e. we know that you've got 6 machines that are running Windows 10, of which 3 are not upgradable, we can then take the ones that are upgradable and we can schedule the updates of the machine. Now, if you're doing it yourself, you'll be able to manually go click now Windows update and let it do its thing, assuming you have the license for that. But for us, if you're using us, you just talk to your account manager or support and say, yeah, we've got 7 machines, or we can tell you you've got 7 machines. And then with those 7 machines, we can go, right, we're going to do these 2 on Wednesday, these 2 on Friday, and these 2 next week. And then that doesn't add up, I get that. Okay, but you'll be able to then schedule those updates. If you've got quite a large estate where you've got a lot of machines, we could group them so that only 1 of each department gets done at the same time, or 2 from a department, but we can actually sort of filter these out so that we don't do everybody at the same time. The updates will actually happen overnight. However, they do require reboots. So it might be that when you then start your computer in the morning, instead of just coming straight up and logging in, you'll come up and say updates installing, and then it'll do it. But the bulk of the work will be done overnight. Run out of Lemsip. Right. Now, if you have to upgrade the PCs and you need new PCs, then I'm afraid that's it. You're just going to have to buy new PCs. My recommendation would to do it sooner rather than later. I'm 50-50 whether to say the price will rise by PC manufacturers closer to the date because they know there's going to be a lot of sales, or they might produce deals and make them cheaper. It's a complete punt at the moment as to which way it will go. In theory, I mean, there's X million machines running Windows 10. In theory, there's X million machines that will need to be upgraded. So it's a bit of a punt either way. If you're using our Microsoft Modern Workplace and you've been configured correctly, then effectively you would literally just ship you a machine. So we would, well, you can, but we would generally order the machine. It would be delivered straight to you. You literally switch it on, open it up, insert your email address, and then the machine will set up. It takes about 20 to 30 minutes, but it will set up and then it will just be ready to go. All your data will be moved across, etc., etc. If you don't have it, then if you're not one of our clients, then you're going to need to set the machines up. You're going to need to configure Outlook and all the applications and sign into everything. But you need to do that. If you're not a Modern Workplace with us, then it's probably a good idea to do that because it does make deploying a PC is really, really easy and quick. However, just talk to your account manager and they will arrange for getting the PCs, getting them configured and installed for you. Now, I appreciate that if there's a substantial number of computers that need to be upgraded, it can be quite a hit on your finances. There are options around that. So currently, I believe that this would be considered as a hardware purchase would be considered as tax deductible for the same financial year. There's also leasing options. So instead of actually buying the computers outright, you can actually just lease them over X years. So there's 2 options for leasing. Either lease it, make it up for 3 years, the end of 3 years, return the PCs and do it again. Or the other option is lease it over 3 years, and then at the end you make a small payment and then they become yours. So there's kind of different options, but it's a way of spreading the financial hit out over the longer period. What you should do next? Well, I kind of alluded to this already, but the key thing is to find out the impacts on your business. You need to identify which machines need to be upgraded, which machines need to be replaced, and then put a plan in place for how you're going to roll that out over the next few months. It'd be much more sensible to do that now and hit any issues that you're going to hit, rather than leaving it to October and then having a massive panic about the fact that 3 machines broke while they were upgrading or whatever it might be. To be fair, so far we have upgraded 70% of all the ones that we've picked up. We're working through the remaining 30% piece by piece, but we will have the bulk of the ones done way before the October deadline. What I will say is, if you're one of our clients and one of our guys contacts you about a Windows 11 update or an issue with it, then please respond, please get back to them, just to allow us to knock that one off the machine list that we need to do. And the key thing about how can you keep your business stays protected. So I'm probably not supposed to say this, okay, but there's particular industries such as manufacturing where they'll, well, let's go for metal manufacturing. They will spend £200,000 on the machine, and that machine will work with a particular OS, and it will only work with that. And if you want to change it, you've got to buy another £200,000 machine. Now, this isn't really feasible, especially if you've got 5 of them. So there are ways of making any outdated operating system safer, okay, within a business, okay, and it means no internet access and a whole load of other stuff. However, I will say that if you do that, the way to do it and make yourself able to pass cybersecurity Cyber Essentials certification is complicated and can be awkward to actually implement. So if that's not a necessity, then the answer is that you upgrade. If you can't upgrade, then there is a slight way around it, but it will be a pain to do. And it's not the answer. It's just effectively a short-term fix, and you'd need to be looking at doing whatever you need to do to upgrade in the future. So that actually covers it. And although we put it in for 3/4 of an hour, I thought it'd be closer to 15 minutes. So we've done as expected.